So getting into tech is something that everybody wants to do, but I think a lot of people have a big challenge translating that idea into reality. On the Working in Tech podcast, that is one of the things that we look to help with and to help demystify. And that's why I'm really excited about today's guests. So we've brought all kinds of guests to the podcast. We've brought directors of engineering, directors of product. But today, I'm completely flipping that on the end because the goal for me is to be able to bring people across the entire spectrum just to bring a glimpse. And as I talk to today's guests, I think you guys are going to get as excited as I am. Welcome to the show, Levi.
Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm really excited for this conversation. Let's have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I not maybe forgot or didn't forget to mention is that Levi is also a content creator, so follow him everywhere. And
For sure.
also, he's a college student on his way to make his big break in tech. And the conversation that we're going to be having is especially around, the things that I find so fascinating about this journey. So, my first question to you, Levi, is why tech? Why was it tech for you?
That's actually a very good question. I have a lot of people ask me that question very often, and it just makes me think back to when all this actually started in the beginning. I was actually in high school. I think I had 1 year left in high school, and we were on break, we were on vacation, and that was when I first got exposed to programming. So it all started from me trying to change my jam score. So jam is an exam we took then when we are trying to go into college. So I failed my first jam exam and I tried to change my score just to show my parents. So I went into the browser and I figured out you could do inspect on the browser, go in and change the text and also print out that page without, you know, them noticing anything. So I changed my jam score, printed it out, and it worked. And I was like, wow, so you could actually do this. Then I kept going down that rabbit hole. I discovered there was something called programming, HTML, CSS. I started learning about HTML tags. I started learning about how to style pages with CSS, and I just kept going down that rabbit hole. I learned HTML, CSS, I learned JavaScript, I learned React, I learned PHP, and those were the five major things I learned before I started doing content creation or before I started building projects, right? Well, actually, to go back, I actually started building projects after I learned HTML and CSS. My first ever portfolio was still on my GitHub that was built with HTML and CSS only. I learned JavaScript. I updated that portfolio to run on JavaScript. Then I learned PHP. Then that was when I started building. I learned PHP and React, and that was when I started building full stack applications. So the to answer your question, how it all started was just me being inquisitive on how I could cheat on my jam score, and I figured out there was something called HTML, CSS, and I just kept going down that rabbit hole.
There's so many parts of your answer that I really want to break down, but I
For
want to
sure.
highlight that first part, right? Because I think speaking about tech, it's great because of course you can do a lot of amazing things for yourself. You can make a lot of money, you can save, you can invest, you can build generational wealth, that a lot of people like
Yeah,
to talk about. But I think something that gets missed, right, in that conversation is that technology exists to solve problems. And maybe
for
even the
sure.
gamut within which we talk about technology is a little limited, right? People forget the typewriter was technology, right? The photocopy machine was technology. There's so many things that are technology that don't get leveraged or used anymore, right? Today.
Yeah,
So, in essence, technology is a way to solve problems, like figuring out a way. A lot of it is now the internet and like code and things like that, but it's still important to think about that. And it's interesting, like you had a goal, right, which was like, how do I make myself look better in front of my parents? And then you figured
exactly.
out a way to make technology solve that. I just didn't want to lose that. I thought that that was very fascinating. And even the motivation, right? Like you'll be surprised how much you can learn when you have the right set of incentives. So I think that was fascinating. But let's take it back a little bit, right?
Yeah,
You figured out one language, you figured out a bunch of others. To help the person watching this who maybe is even thinking about software engineering but doesn't even know where to start, right? Can you break down what you learned in each of those phases and what does each of those language represent, right? Just for the person who doesn't even know.
Yeah, for sure. So I initially learned HTML and CSS. So you can, every software developer, every software engineer will tell you that HTML and CSS are not programming languages. HTML is more of a markup language. It's basically tags that your browser represents into visuals. So I learned HTML and CSS. I learned initially I was, trying to memorize all the HTML tags without looking them up, right? Which was a horrible idea. Like, do not do it. I learned that the hard way. I was trying to memorize all the HTML tags, H1s, basically all the HTML tags, right? But I was able to do that. Then I discovered CSS and how to, manipulate those things with CSS, change the colors, change the positions, kind of like position things differently to kind of make sense to the eye. So once I was able to do those two things and I was able to create a website, like website I use every day. Like think about me going to Facebook to log in, right? I could build out the Facebook login screen with HTML and CSS, like style everything to like pixel perfect the same way it is on Facebook, right? So that actually motivated me to know to learn how can I click this login button and it does something, or how can I type in my email address and I can see my email address on the screen when I hit the login button, right? So that's when I discovered JavaScript. Then I started learning about DOM manipulation with JavaScript. I learned how to manipulate the HTML tags, the HTML attributes using um, JavaScript, and that kind of took my projects to the next level. So I wasn't just making markup languages and styling them, or making markup things and styling them. I was able to use JavaScript to manipulate those things as well. Then after that, I was able to learn about fetch API, how to make API requests using JavaScript. So after learning that, the first thing I built was a to-do application. So what I basically did was fetch a bunch of to-dos from a JSON placeholder API endpoint, store them on the local storage. Then whenever the user actually refreshes the browser, their to-dos are still there. So that was when I was like, okay, this actually makes a lot more sense. Like I could actually use this app to like list out the things I need to do, save it, and actually come back and it's still there, right? So I took it to the next step. I learned PHP. The main reason I learned PHP was I was looking for a way to actually deploy this application and still make sure that whatever I've built is publicly available, both the front end, the servers, and also the database, right? Actually, I was just reading the comments. Sorry. So I was looking for a way to um make whatever I've built publicly available to everyone, and also make sure that other people could also store their to dos whenever they want to and also come back and see it. And I realized that using local storage wasn't the most efficient way to do it. So I learned PHP. I learned how to use PHP to interact with MySQL, and I was able to build server-side applications using PHP and MySQL. The common CRUD applications, create, read, update, delete, using that same to-do application. Then after doing that, I got bored and I was like, "What's next? What next can I do?" I learned about React. React was like a milestone for me. Most people don't understand, but I feel like if I didn't discover React, my career would have ended with PHP. Like that would have just been the end, right? But I had that motivation to actually learn more, and that was when I actually found out about React. I learned React. It was actually hard learning React. I'm not gonna lie, React actually busted my ass. Sorry for my my language, but React was actually so difficult to learn. I actually didn't learn it completely. Then I got bored doing web development. That was when I discovered React Native, how I could build mobile apps just the same way I was building React apps, but they run on mobile. So that's kind of how I was able to, walk my way all the way till here. Like ever since I learned React, every other thing I know, aside from those five things I mentioned, but just curiosity. right? C sharp, I actually learned that in a class, and I figured out that it was actually easier to, interface with SQL and also, create CRUD applications using C sharp.net compared to PHP. So that was actually what made me switch from PHP to C sharp. Same thing with, Next.js, TypeScript, just basically curiosity. I was like, okay, so you can actually make JavaScript function like Java. Like you can have the same strictly typed, feature from Java in JavaScript if you learn TypeScript. So I was like, why not? So let me go ahead and learn TypeScript. So it was just basically curiosity was what made me learn everything I've learned so far.
And that's so fascinating, especially what you said about React Native, because I remember us building an entire app, both Android and iOS, and using nothing but, or mostly React Native. Let me not say nothing but. That's when I really that's when I really knew like how powerful it was. But I'm really fascinated by your learning journey, and thanks for sharing all that. To kind of like, so then take it all back, right? Because
Yeah.
you're doing some of this learning on your own, you're also doing the learning in class. What's the difference between that, and how do those two worlds coincide?
I'm really, 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 really happy you asked this question because learning in college is so different from learning by yourself. So don't get me wrong. People usually think I'm anti-college. I'm not, because I'm actually paying thousands of dollars to go to college, right? So there is no way in my normal senses I will be anti-college. The learning process in college and being self-taught are two different worlds. You do get the structure. So college gives you structure, right? You learn this, then you learn this, you learn this. No matter what you do, you will never get them wrong because there's a curriculum you have to follow, right? I would say that's probably the perk about going to college or learning through college, right? But being self-taught, you can go down so many rabbit holes that you get lost, right? So if I wasn't careful with what I was doing when I was learning, I would have learned the wrong things at the wrong time, which I actually did. I'm not gonna lie, like I actually did. I jumped into React Native too soon just because I was like, oh, I could actually build mobile apps with my knowledge in React. So why not? So I was I was moving faster than myself, and that actually hurt me in a different way. But college gives you that structure, so that way, no matter what you do or where you go, you're still going down the right path, right? But when it comes, the perks of self learning is pace.
Mm.
You can learn whenever you want, however you want, right? As long as you can get the college structure without going to college and get the benefits of being self-taught, just learning by yourself, right? When you're self-taught, you have that ability to learn at your own pace. You have the freedom to select the best material. People don't understand how important that is, right? When you go to college, you're limited to whatever your professor tells you or whatever your textbook tells you. But being self-taught, you can search up like JavaScript crash course on YouTube. There are probably hundreds of videos. You can select whichever one actually, teaches you what you want to know. Like your professor might have a JavaScript class in college, right? But they might not go through every single thing you actually need to know about JavaScript. But with YouTube or self-learning, you can actually target the specific things you want to learn and learn them till you're satisfied. But college is you only have like 1 week to be on a specific topic in JavaScript and you're done. You take a quiz and you probably build or you probably do like one assignment and that's all, right? You go into the next thing, right? You don't really have that. You can't really pace yourself, right? So that's just the difference between being self-taught and learning through college. Which will I recommend? I would say, if not for how peaky the job market is, I would say no one should actually be going to college to learn how to be a software engineer.
Mm,
Like let's be honest. I know
mm.
you've worked in the industry, you have experience, you've worked with software engineers. I'm just gonna ask you a throwback question.
Okay.
Do you think that I know you're a project manager, so you've worked with software engineers. Do you think that the skills and the quality of a software engineer relies on them going to college or them being self-taught? Do you think it really matters whichever one they chose?
So it's interesting that you asked that, because I was literally going to, you know, kind of like echo some of your sentiments, right? So
Yeah.
I I'm also currently in school. I'm getting my MBA, and
Okay.
I founded multiple businesses, right? So it's so interesting that you mentioned that, right? Because going to school right now, I'm learning some of the things that, are giving me introspection. Like the very first course I took was management accounting. And what they were
Okay.
teaching me in that course was basically like the different concepts around how you depreciate an asset. So let's say you have an Uber business and you buy a car, the different depreciation methods where you could use that car and which one applies, right? So you could just take a straight depreciation where you're depreciating by mile, or let's say the asset is something that's very expensive in the first year and then maybe becomes cheaper later on. That kind of like switches around. So
Yeah.
I thought that that was very interesting anyway, to learn all of these different things conceptually. But I don't think that like going to get an MBA makes you like a great business person, because there's
No.
so much things like intuition, quick action,
Mm-hmm.
grit. They can't teach that in school, right? Regardless.
They cannot, bro. For real.
But I think the beauty of it, or where it comes together, is like, as long as we live in this world, people care about
Mm-hmm.
credentials, right? There's
Oh
so
yeah.
many opportunities that
Which
will
is
come.
actually sad. Like I'm just gonna put it out there. It's so sad that people actually do that because I'm sorry to cut you off, but I don't just want to lose this thought.
Mm.
Do they actually consider people who cannot afford to get a degree?
So this is the flip side, though. It's that, again, this is usually what I say, because it took me also, like, I went on a journey like you are on right now to come to this conclusion. If you can
Yeah.
go to college, go to college. In fact, there was a debate that
Yeah.
was trending after, like, the Super Bowl, where they were saying some people are getting degrees. Since you understand the game, if you find a two
It's
thousand
funny that
dollar
someone said that.
BSc, go get that BSc if you can. Like, if
Yep.
you, regardless of whatever it is that you want to do, if you can get that master's degree for 5,000, 10,000, go get that master's degree. Uh, this college, Georgia Tech, has a cybersecurity master's for $10,000. Go get it, right?
Sure.
Because again, there's, just like you said, there's that value in that structure. Does that stop you if you don't have it? No, it doesn't. Because I've led a
That's
training
exactly what I
program.
was saying.
I've led a training program where we had people who had no college degree, and they came into tech and they were able to get the job. So that should not stop you in any way, shape, or form. But ultimately, you can still win with it. That's kind of like my long-winded answer.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought process about it too. I mean, not going to college in today's job market will limit you to some extent when it comes to the professional setting, but when it comes to your breadth of knowledge, it does not limit you in any way. You are probably smarter than someone that went to a 5 year college, like for real. Like in my opinion, like I'm currently in college and I have a lot of course mates that for them being in their third year in college, you expect them to know how some things work or know how to do some things, but they literally have no clue. Like no hates to them or anything. I don't blame them. It's just the way the curriculum is, right? The curriculum isn't structured to teach you what you need to know to become a software engineer. The curriculum only teaches you what you need to know to get curious to go learn by yourself. That's college. College doesn't teach you everything you need to know to come out and go get a software engineering job at Apple or Google. Like college doesn't give you that knowledge, right? They only teach you the basics just to give to build that curiosity for you to go learn by yourself. And the question then becomes, do you think it's worth paying that much just to get curious to just at the end of the day for you to go learn by yourself? It's a conversation we can have for a very long time and still come to no conclusion.
And that's a really good point you bring up. I know we have some comments. I really want to shout them out real quick.
Sure.
So I'm unfortunately it's not showing your name. You said, I love this setup y'all have going on. It's so funny that Levi and I were literally saying before we went live who had the better setup. I said it was him. He said it was me. So let me know in the comments who has the cleaner setup. Uh, and then this other question says, a lot of times the successful college students make time for self-learning. Absolutely.
I was actually gonna, respond to what that person said. That's the piece a lot of people miss about college. Like just going through the motions of college, just going through your classes, doing your assignments is not going to do you any good. Every successful person that went through college actually spent more time outside of college learning that they did in class, right? So like a lot of the software engineers you see that have degrees at MIT or any of this prestigious colleges, yes, the curriculum at those colleges are probably better than most of these community colleges, but like a lot of them actually put in the work self-learning outside of those colleges,
Mhm.
right? They still watch tutorial videos, they still take courses outside of their classes just to expand their breadth of knowledge. So that is actually something that's something a lot of college students need to understand, especially when they're in CS, especially CS.
And you know what's interesting about that is like I don't even think that the college experience is designed to be the be all end all. If it was, we wouldn't have internships. And that's why like you see that even people who don't a lot of people who don't have a lot of people who don't get internships while they're in college sometimes struggle to find jobs in the job market, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
you know it, but do you really know it, right? And it was interesting that Elon, for example, said, show us your code. We don't care what you went to school. We
Oh man,
see
that's
what
see
is true.
a lot of people hate Elon Musk, but like that's one reason I like that dude, man. He's not all about the whole sentiment and all that, BS. It's like show me what you can do. If you can do it, you have the job. It's that simple. And that is how it's supposed to be.
Uh,
That is how it used to be until a lot of people flooded the CS market, and companies were like, all right, hold up, show me proof that you actually know what show me a college degree to prove that you've gone to college before we can give you this job. It's
uh,
just sad that it has changed, man.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think we do have a question from Yuki, but before we go there, I'm just gonna shout out this last comment from LinkedIn. Says, I went to Afrotech as someone without a degree, and yes, I can say unfortunately, I did not have many opportunities, even with 3 internships under my belt. I definitely feel that. The only thing that I'm gonna say is, see, I have a very rugged perspective, right? And I'm gonna give it is that I do have, so starting my tech career journey in the US, I had a lot of founder experience back home in Nigeria. I I'd done a lot of things. I knew a lot of stuff, but there was still a lot of stuff I didn't know, right? I got my Scrum
Yeah.
Master certification here. I even had to start in program management before I switched to product management. My current role that I'm in, um, it's the first time I've been a solution engineer, right? There's
Oh.
so many things I didn't have, right? But I've never ever let that deter me. This is the perspective I always have. See, even if the world has like 900 people have the wrong perspective, think about it. You and I are having this conversation. We think very
Yep.
different. There are
For
people
sure.
out there who also have that perspective. It may be harder for us to get to, but as long as I keep shooting my shot, eventually somebody's going to listen. So there are 2 options, 3 options really, right? You can look at the things that you don't have and let that deter you and give up. The world is still going to do what the world is going to do. Or you can
Exactly.
ignore what you don't have and keep shooting your shot anyway. Somebody's going to take a chance. Or you might take the long route and say, I know I don't have it, bet I'm going to go get it so that
Yeah.
I'll be good. But regardless, like if you do that first option of giving up, you've just done yourself a disservice. So the journey might be harder, and I have a lot of sympathy for that. But you have to keep finding a way. That's the only way.
Bro, you answered that perfectly. Like that was exactly what I was gonna say.
So there's a question here for you from Yuki. Says, how long did it take you to get to this point, Levi?
Well, I guess you're asking based on what I know. I would say it's my journey started in 2019. So if you do the math, it's about almost 5 years. It actually started late 2019. Once I got done with high school in August of was August? Oh, actually July of 2019. I didn't start programming till like about September of 2019. So it's probably been about almost 5 years now. So the end of this 2025 is going to make it 5 years since I, started learning how to code. And I'll say it don't really focus on how long it took. Like everyone is different. It might have taken me 5 years to, learn everything I know today. And for some people, that might be too long. And so for some people, it might be, oh, this guy, jumped some stairs, like that was too quick. Right? Everyone learn things differently. Like it might take you like probably 2 months to, master HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But it took me about a year for me to actually be confident building projects with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because the way I base my level of success in a specific language is different from the way you gauge your own level of success. Right? For you, you might be able to build this application with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you feel like, okay, that's enough. On to the next, like I'm done. Right? But for me, before I know it's time for me to, go to the next thing, I make sure I can, build this thing without help. Right? Like I try to build this thing, without trying to, rewatch a tutorial or go back to see how this guy did it, and not just building it, but understanding why it works. How does this work? Like I don't just want to, use the JavaScript fetch API and call it a day because it's so easy to you just use fetch, put in the URL, and you have your response in your console. Like how does that work under the hood? That's what's going to separate me from you, because if we were at an interview right now and they asked you, oh, how does the fetch API work under the hood? Most people don't know, right? But if you take your time, it takes more time to understand how those things work under the hood, and that is probably why it took me so long to know what I know right now or get to where I am right now, and it might take someone else 2 years, right?
Mhm.
So I would just say don't focus on the time. Spend as much time as you need to learn what you need to know. That's just what I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this next question is the one that I've actually been most excited to ask.
Okay, let's go.
And it's because, see, when we eventually like researched Levi and wanted to bring him to the show, I didn't actually know that he was a student. I mean, look at how clean he looks on camera, right? And he
Bruh.
gives really good advice, honest, open, sharing exactly what he's learning. See, one of the steps, like I have almost like a 6-step process for people to get into tech. The first one is like research and really know yourself and know what role you want to get into. Then once you kind of like have that initial understanding, don't limit it to just one role. Kind of like scope it out over maybe like a couple of roles. So it could be like
Mm-hmm.
maybe cybersecurity
Exactly.
risk and something else. Don't just box yourself. And then at that level,
True.
go watch like a bunch of videos, maybe like 3 videos per role. Watch a day in the life, watch the things that you have to learn, and go play with it. So that before you go too deep, you can understand exactly, is this where I really want to play or do I want to try something different? Then understand, how do I break down this learning to like the basic level? And it's funny because that's what you've explained. You learn HTML, you learn JavaScript. You give yourself a milestone to be able to do something. Once you're able to do that, you got more curious to do the next thing. That's staggered learning. And break it
Yeah.
down that way. And once you've done that, then start to build things with it. It may be harder for people who are like maybe like project managers, but for example, you have to manage stakeholders. Can you convince a
Yeah.
Levi and somebody else to quickly help you to an application over the weekend? Because guess what? That's something you can now put on your resume, that you're able to convince two strangers who don't care about you to work together to help you build something. Because now I don't have any. If I was a hiring manager hiring a for a product manager, I'm not gonna have any problem hiring you because I know you could do it. It doesn't matter you've not done it at a company as big as this or a big enterprise, but you've done it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
You've
want to
done it.
see.
Yeah.
And then you want to build your resume, build your portfolio, build your LinkedIn, all of that good stuff. But an important and very key part that you can overlook is your image and your network. See, you can throw almost everything else I said away and focus on that, because if you have the right person guiding you, you can figure out step 1 to 6, because people are literally your biggest asset. They'll give you the opportunities, they'll give you the dibs, they'll give you the knowledge. I mean, I'm here talking to a person about how to do it. The reason why awesome is because he does this really well. How he shows up, how he shares knowledge. He's not here giving game and saying, "Oh, this was what I was doing 20 years ago." No, he's sharing his time in space. So to help people understand how you even do that, right? As somebody who's coming up in the world yourself, you're looking for opportunity. How
Mhm.
did you become, first of all, how did you learn that you had to show up in the way that you're showing up? And then two, why did you even think that that was valuable?
So whenever someone asks me like, bro, why did you start content creation, right? The answer is so simple. Like when I was learning how to code back in 2019, 2020, I was looking for content creators like myself, right? I was looking for people who were creating content the way I create content, right? There are two different kind of tech creators. There are tech content creators, people who share value, and there are tech influencers. Back in 2019, 2020, we had a lot of tech influencers always, doing the day in the life of my $300,000 software engineering job. That wasn't really what I needed at that time. I needed someone I could relate to on the same level. Like I'm actually trying to learn something, right? I need someone I could get value from, someone I could relate to. That was the main thing, right? So me starting content creation, I was trying to be that person I was looking for in 2019, 2020. I was trying to create content that someone who is trying to get into software engineering could relate to and could get value from. So that was my biggest why, and that's still my biggest why when it comes to um, the content I create. And why? What was the second part of the question? My bad.
And why
Um,
did you think that was, I think you've answered it, right? Because I was asking, why did you think it was going to be valuable? Or
I
maybe
mean,
let me phrase it a different way. Do you think it even adds value beyond you helping people find tech careers and sharing your journey? Do you think it's even something that could be valuable in your career itself?
yeah. You see, that's a question I could share a lot of testimonies about, but just to answer the part of the about the value, I have received a lot of DMs, and I'm not even saying this to brag. I'm just saying this just because I'm grateful that every single time I create a video, there's always positive feedback, right? There's always someone telling me that, oh, they learned a lot from this. Even till today, like there's some people who watch videos I made in 2020, 2022, my bad, in 2022, and tell me, oh, they really enjoyed this and they really found value in this. Like me myself as a creator, I've forgotten about that video like the week after I made it, right? And that was just like that was a bygone. But someone is still, going back watching those videos and still finding value in it. So that's what I try to do every single time I press record. I don't just want to, talk and get the views and, get the followers. I just try to make sure that, I just want to make sure that someone, watching this could actually, get some value from it and not just me, getting their audience. Like I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to like clickbait people into watching my videos. Like I just try to make sure, someone find value in it. And, to answer your second question, how has that, helped me professionally? Man, I was just telling you before we actually recorded about the career fair I attended. Before this career fair, I actually attended one in September of 2023, 2024. And I would say the reason why I got the interviews I got then, even though they didn't yield to an offer, but the reason people actually even wanted to even hear more about what I wanted to say was because I could prove to them that I have a community of software developers online. Like I have a presence online and I have people who actually, listen to what I'm saying. People who actually find value in what I'm saying. So, being able to show someone that I am able to, create content that thousands of people can watch and actually find value in it, that is that is enough green flag for an employer to, want to actually listen to you. I mean, your project actually matter, but attending to career fairs, I've noticed something. They care about your project. They care about what you've worked on. They care about, the technology part of the job. But they also want to know what your life is like outside of tech, outside of software engineering. What do you do? Right. But me being able to, present myself in that light, being a tech content creator that share value to people, online, and people can actually get value from it, actually, gave me a lot of, green lights during my, interview process, during the last career fair. Even the one I had today, being able to also connect with those people on LinkedIn, and they go on LinkedIn and actually see the work I've been doing on LinkedIn, they're actually very impressed. Actually have people, send me messages after we've met during the career fair and, tell me they're actually impressed with the work I actually do, online. So it's actually It's actually very important that people have some kind of online presence for themselves, because you really never know who's watching and who sees what you're doing.
Thank you, Morgan, for throwing those hands. Really appreciate you. I wanted to add something to that then before
Yeah.
going to my next question. I think something that a lot of people also overlook is the fact that we now live in the era of, uh, people from North Korea going through proxies to get jobs, right? We live in the era of fake resumes. We live in
Oh,
the
for
era
sure.
of chat GPT. Being able to show up authentically as who you are, learning, building, growing, is just a different feeling. It's a different vibe entirely because you may not have all the knowledge, but we know
Hmm.
that when you say you're an engineer, you're really about it. That for me is the biggest factor. And which is a nice segue to my next question because what do you say to people who say, yeah, I get you, but guess what? I don't think I look good on camera. I have no desire to connect with any audience online. I just want to, but is there a way for me, right, to still show up as somebody who's learning, to still get some of these benefits, but I don't want any of the stardom? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so like people think content creation is all about, talking in front of a camera. Like the content creation is way beyond that. Like you can start by sharing your project online. Like your project doesn't have to end at your GitHub repository. Talk about your project. I don't mean like physically talk about your project, like put a camera in your face and talk about your project. Make a LinkedIn post about your project. Make an Instagram post about your project. Share pictures, share what you've learned, share, the obstacles you faced while you were building that project. So it doesn't necessarily have to be you know, scripting out a whole video, posting it on YouTube, posting it on Instagram, getting gear, lights, cameras, and all this fancy stuff. Like I could I could actually meet someone in person, right, and have a conversation with them, and they still find value without me, having lights or cameras or anything. It's more about what you have to offer up here. It's all about what you have up here to offer, and not really. I mean, like we were just talking off camera again, like the gear and all these things actually, play some role in it, but it's more about the value you have to give. So I would say if you know you have the value, you have, you have something that people need to hear. You don't. There's so many ways, or there are so many forms you can pass on that knowledge that doesn't have to, involve you talking in front of a camera or getting all this fancy gear. You can start posting on your story, like there's tech Twitter. Like you can tweet about, whatever you want. There's threads. I actually prefer threads to Twitter because threads is like it's a platform where you can come talk about like literally anything. And whoever is interested is gonna find you. Like that's the good thing about threads. Like, post about anything you're interested in, and people who find that interesting will actually find you. So like I said, it's not all about, talking in front of a camera. It's all about, what you have up here and what you have to deliver and what value you have to give.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's great. Shout out to everyone who's watching. This is
Shout out
working.
to Anor, my man.
Yeah.
I was
Shout out
actually
to
on this
Adore.
podcast. I was actually on this podcast like a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's great. So we're probably gonna do like a podcast roulette where he comes next. This has been working in tech. We've been having such an amazing conversation. We're moving closer to the question segment. So if you have any questions for Levi, leave them in the chat. We'll be happy to take them. And if you just want to do a shout out, I see you all, Sandy, Morgan, Anor. It's been great working with you. LinkedIn user, by the way, it does unfortunately he's not telling us
LinkedIn
who.
user, whoever you are, shout out to you.
Shout out to you. Um, and by the way, I also wanted to shout out. So I started a new show called Ask About Tech. It's a weekly show where I break down all of the ingoings and all the going ons in the tech industry. This week I was talking about the 3,600 people who unfortunately got laid off at Meta. I have thoughts. If you want to see them, go check out the video.
That
But
is
this
so
is
sad,
it's
man.
so sad, man. It's so
I
sad.
actually watched the video and I actually liked how you actually dissected everything about that layoff. It's actually, well, that's I don't want to
No,
divert
no, no.
into some
We
kind
can
of
talk
stuff.
about it if you want to talk about it. It's
But
like
the whole thing about the layoffs was just so crazy. I don't Meta in particular is a company I would advise anyone that if you want to have a solid career, avoid Meta. they have a track record of layoffs, right?
Mm,
And watching your video talking about the people they laid off in particular, it's just so sad because those are people who probably have a lot more value to give to the company, but just because of profit reasons, they had to let them go. Like,
mm.
it's just so sad. I feel like everyone should go watch that video to understand more about what happened with those layoffs.
And like even the larger part that I think is really sinister and more people need to actually talk about is you see a lot of companies now take this route of like profit maximization, doing all of that. Everything used to be about, this was the hierarchy. They'll say uh, people, profits, no, people, maybe process and then profits. But they've
Okay, yeah,
completely flipped it all over. It's all profits.
profit.
And the sad part about it that really breaks my heart is, you know, we've seen this cycle before. This was the same thing that happened in the manufacturing industries where they shipped all of the jobs overseas. Now America doesn't have the competence to make many of these things anymore. So even if we don't want to manufacture abroad anymore, right? We can't
Yeah.
literally do it. Like if you think about like all of this big chip companies, the government
Hmm.
has to invest billions and billions of dollars just for us to get up to speed, just for us to catch up. Now that they realize, for America to stay competitive in the world, we have to actually make those things here. So
Yeah.
a lot of the companies taking this approach, they may make short-term profit for their companies, but in the
Hmm.
end, the country loses and the industry loses, right? You want to invest
Yeah.
more and more in people. There's if you think about it, like I actually had this interesting conversation with a CEO on Twitter last week who was talking about the fact that they're going to train AI and do all these things, and they're going to have senior engineers. And then to use the worst example, he talked about music. But is it not music where you have
Oh
like
Lord.
YMCMB? You have to bring upcoming talent up. Even the people in the game know that. Like that's why, like if there's a new kid on the block, they're gonna bring him around because they know he can
Hmm.
also help and influence them, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but that's that about that. If you really want to get the full perspective, like we said, go watch that show. I still have a lot of interesting questions for Levi, but before I go there, I think Yuki has another question. Says for someone learning JavaScript, what can you post about?
I would say, so let's say you picked up, dumb manipulation in JavaScript. If you've learned dumb manipulation to the point where you can, manipulate the DOM properly, being able to let me find a very good example. Like I was just showing a Waddle game we built in class like today on my Instagram live that had a lot to do with dumb manipulation. So if you can build something out using dumb manipulation, you've learned dumb manipulation, you've built something, share it. Don't just let it die there, right? There's no way you tell me you've learned JavaScript without, being able to build something out. Whatever it is you learned, it could be dumb manipulation, it could be, how to make API requests, it might be how to connect to a MongoDB database. Whatever it is you learned, no matter how little it is, first of all, try to build something from it, then share about what you built, what you learned, what are the troubles you faced while building it. You never know who is watching. That's how I started. I actually started, making videos about ChatGPT when ChatGPT first came out, right? And I never knew. I started dissecting how this ChatGPT works, LLMs and data sets and all that. I was just making it just to share the knowledge, but I never knew that people were actually listening and actually found interest in it, and that's how my audience grew. So you never know who's going to be interested in what you know until you share it, right? So no matter how little it is, just share it. Like you never know who's going to listen or you never know who's watching.
That's a really good one, and I'll layer it with this one, right? Because
Yeah.
there was something that I saw somebody do that really blew my mind. So I don't know how many people who's watching who know Davido and Wizkid, but these are like huge Afrobeats artists, right?
The
And just
goats.
like just like Kendrick and Drake, they also kind of like have unspoken and even sometimes spoken beef. But ultimately, what happened was this person was a data person and they were learning visualization. So they went into the
Hmm.
charts and said, who's the undisputed king of Afrobeats? And they brought the numbers to try to prove it. So they're using their skill and data to try to tell a story about something that everybody cares about,
Oh,
right?
That's impressive.
And if you think about it this way, right? I could use an example. Let's say the Super Bowl, right? You have
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes on one side, you have Jalen Hurts on the other. Can you build a data visualization that shows who's actually the better quarterback? And maybe it's not Mahomes, right? As everybody thinks, because maybe you have data that backs that up, or you could even spark controversy and find a way to tell use the data to tell a different story that may not show that. Are you a software engineer? Can you write some code that does something to kind of like maybe visualize something or bring something to life? Are you a product manager who could build some kind of like product around it? Are you the one putting all this effort together, right? So think about it this way. You have an idea. That's who a product manager is. Then you bring together like a UI person, you bring together like a data person, you bring together an engineer, and together you guys build this dashboard that says this thing. And
Hmm.
I think where projects like that actually stand out beyond just the generic or clone projects that everybody does is that now you can tell the story. See, if
Yeah.
I make a to-do app or calculator or Twitter clone, yeah, that's cool. Like that is me bringing knowledge to my perspective. But it doesn't work as well as me bringing something completely random because now I can tell you about the two Afrobeats artists, even if you're like somebody who's not connected to the culture at all. So that even builds up the story.
I
And
actually want to. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No.
So the final thing that I would say is I think inadvertently by people sharing, there's even one more skill that you need in tech that you're learning that most people don't realize. The most human skill is storytelling. So the
Yep.
fact that you can use storytelling to bring your project to life. And guess what? We're all moving walking stories every single day, right? You went to work. Did you see the drama on the streets while you were going? Did something happen? There's a thought process. Like everything that we create, whether it's a project, whether it's something we're learning, there's something that's driving that. And that perspective matters, right? How can you share that? And the more you bring that, because think about it this way, even when you're doing like coding interviews, you have to talk through your process when you're at work. So
I was
when you
just
get
gonna
the
say that.
when you get the job, when they say, how should we solve this problem? There's always never one way to solve it. Can you advocate for your ideas, right? To say, while this may be the better way, right? If we actually want to build for scale in the future, right? Let's not just think about what solves the problem today. This problem is going to show up 10 more times. While this will take 4 months to build and the other alternative takes only 6 weeks, it makes sense for us to invest the 4 months because this, and that a third.
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually mentioned this because people don't understand the skill you gain when you actually come and talk about your project online. Because when you talk about things online, there are a lot of love and there's also a lot of hate and criticism, right? So like you being able to taking all those hate and criticism and being able to improve your work based on those hate comments and those criticism. People don't know that's a skill, right? And just to go back to the same career fair I had today, I was able, just because I was just because I've done content creation, just because I've come on here, talked about load balancing, API gateways, and all this complex systems architecture stuff, that helped me explain my project in a technical manner to a technical recruiter. The guy, I can't tell you how invested this guy at Honda was. He was a Honda recruiter. This dude was so invested when I was telling him about how data is being stored on Scribbler, one of my most recent projects. I was telling him how the whenever a user uploads images to Scribbler, it first goes through a compression process with Python then uploads the images to S3 buckets, then S3 buckets distributes them to through AWS Cloudflare CDN, right? Me being able to explain that technically, the dude was so interested, right? And I was only able to do that because I've talked about it so many times in my videos in a way that someone who's not even into tech could understand. And now I'm talking to a technical person means I'm going to do a better job. You understand? So like being able to talk about your projects, and again, you don't have to have a camera or talk into a camera or talking to your phone's microphone or anything. Like you can always tweet about it. Make a lengthy LinkedIn post about your project. That way it makes you think as as if you're presenting your project to a recruiter, for example, because you don't just want to say, "Oh, I built this," I used JavaScript, fetch this, that. No, you're actually trying to structure, like you said, storytelling. You're trying to structure, everything you've learned while building that thing in a way that someone who's not even into tech could understand, right?
Mm,
So like that's just to add to what you were saying. And I know you were talking about being able to explain what you know in fun ways. There was a lady that actually blew up on TikTok just because she was able to dissect the way Spotify rap worked under the hood, like with the whole data, right? So this lady, like, if you went to her TikTok profile, you would think it's just one of those regular girls on TikTok that just post about beauty and lifestyle. This girl just out of the blue just posted a video on how Spotify database worked and how they're able to keep track of all the songs you've listened to for a year and being able to, visually show you, all the songs you've listened to, what genre of music you're listening to, and when you did. She was able to, just because she was, well, after that video, I now realized she was actually a data scientist at, I don't know what company she works for, but she was able to build an audience just by explaining what other people saw as fun,
mm.
right? So you never know who's watching, or you never know who's going to be interested. That's just what I have to say, man. It's just so crazy.
And I think like you even that brings home the point, and now I'm excited to actually go check out and see that video. So
Like I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna send it to you. It's actually very interesting.
I definitely want to watch it. So there's a question. So how do you deal with imposter syndrome? That's from Sandy.
I will say imposter syndrome is actually a good thing in disguise. It depends on how you look at it, right? So imposter syndrome is when you feel like you don't deserve to be where you are right now. That's the whole gist of imposter syndrome. It means you're actually doing something right to be where you are. I mean, you might not have everything figured out completely, but it means you're heading towards the right direction, right? So whenever you have that imposter syndrome, change your mindset from being that, oh, I'm an imposter, I don't know what I'm doing. I actually do feel like that almost like every day, because whenever someone comes to my DM and tell me that, hey, like, I inspired them, I'm like, I don't think I am up to that level to inspire someone. Or like whenever I'm talking to someone and they're very impressed with what I've done, I'm like, I don't know if what I did was actually that good. But in reality, what I did was actually that good for someone to actually find it interesting. Not just someone, multiple people to actually, give me feedback and say, hey, this thing you did is actually so good. Right. So it makes me think that, why am I actually feeling like an imposter? Like, it means I'm actually doing something right for multiple people to actually, find what I'm doing interesting. So if you ever at any point feel like you have imposter syndrome, it means you're heading towards the right direction. Just switch your mindset. That's just what it's all about.
I actually recently gave someone that same advice, right? It's like I think imposter syndrome is even necessary for success because
Oh, for sure. People
it
should actually think about it like that. Yeah.
again, not one is negative and it crushes you. That's not what I'm talking about. But every single person, in fact, there was something that I saw. It's like they say like the best people, like if you think about just like the alpha, like the top of the food chain, if you like, right? They're
Hmm.
like constantly shuffling between I'm the best thing since sliced bread and like I'm a complete failure. Like I'm done. And you need a
Yeah.
good dose of both, right? Because it is the awesomeness that you think that you have that even makes you to dare some things. Because some of those things that we do are actually crazy when you think about it. Like, why would you even have the audacity to think that you could change, you know, for people who don't know, like your jam score, that's like, the SAT. Like, why would you even think that you could do that? But it's that audacity that comes with it. But on the flip side of that, if you all you have was that audacity, but you didn't have a good dose of let me check myself a little bit, you're gonna be stuck doing one thing and never improve. The fact that you feel like you don't
That is
know
so
enough
true.
is why you have the desire to always want to improve. Like this is good, but it could always be better, right? And that is the innate thing that helps you become better. Because if you feel like you're good enough, why would you even try, right? Uh,
Yeah.
in fact, there was something that they said, which is kind of like adjacent, but not the same. They said even within kids, one of the indicators of success is an understanding of like delay gratification, right? This idea
Mm-hmm.
of better, right? Is that you can have a candy today or you can have two tomorrow. Kids who say I want two tomorrow are most likely to be entrepreneurial successes because they understand
Yeah,
the value of this is good, but it can always be better, right?
better. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like
Yeah.
that.
So this is working in tech. We're running into like the home stretch right now. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Uh, this LinkedIn user again strikes again, say super awesome. They were talking to you where you said, "Are you awesome?" Yeah, they're validating it. Yeah, he's awesome. I told you guys. Um, and just kind of like think, create like a mental model, right? As
Yeah.
you're approaching, because a lot of times, like when we talk about getting a job or landing an opportunity, we're talking to people who've done it. So a lot of times we're talking about they're working us back. As you are
Hmm.
working forward, what is kind of like vision that you see, like you being able to like learn your maybe first full-time opportunity in tech? What steps are you taking towards that, etc.?
So one of it is currently what I'm doing right now. Putting myself out there. Having a public, presence for myself, because people think, a lot of people, look at what I do and they tag it as, trying to be an influencer or trying to like be popular or anything. Like, people don't understand the benefits behind this, right? It's not all about being popular or anything like that. It's more about, having an online presence for yourself, because this is basically documenting your process, right? So whenever someone comes and asks you, show me proof, I have proof. Like, this is everything I've been up to for the past 3 years since I've been a content creator, right? And secondly is building projects. People, I know I've preached this over and over and over again. You can know everything you know, but if you don't have any projects to prove what you know is just, it's on paper. Like, there's nothing to prove that you know what you know. So like, building project is super important to me. Like, I have built, man, I can't even keep count of the projects I've built, for real. Like, there are just so many of them, and I try to always build projects that are not just projects, but projects that are meaningful to me, and
Mhm,
projects that solve problem.
mhm,
Right? I don't just want to, build something because, it's cool, or I want to build something because, I found it online or something. I want to build something because it solves a problem for me, or it solves a problem for, somebody. Because one thing I actually, going back again to today's career fair, I would say something that actually gave me a good, edge was my project. I was able to, show them that I have built something that is live in production and there are people actually using it. Like, nothing beats that, right? Nothing beats that. Being able to show that you've built a full stack application that people are actually using. Because if you think about it, that's exactly what you're going to be doing on the job, right? Proving to an employer that you can even do that independently is a huge boost, is a huge boost for you, right? So I would say definitely, putting yourself out there, having an online presence for yourself, so that way you can document your process, and also building projects. Those are the two main things I'm actually focusing on right now. I mean, there's more to it. There's also, improving your communication skill, and also, a lot of those people skills that are also important for the job. But right now I'm focusing on, building my online presence, and also building as much project as possible.
Wow. It seems like today's episode is going to drag way beyond 7 p.m. because we're at time, but but we still have a couple of questions. So we'll keep going. Um,
Sure, let's go.
so Obed, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, says, how do I know I'm actually improving while learning? Oh,
Ooh,
I'm sorry.
that's
And before you answer that, I actually wanted to tack something on that, right? Because
yeah.
every business, if you think about it, exists to solve a problem. If there was no problem, literally, we're talking about it today. Like, why is there no more funding for AI projects in Africa, right? And one of the things that we say is like, you have to find a use case. It doesn't matter how cool the stuff that you build is. If it doesn't solve a problem for someone, it doesn't matter. So you being able to tie your code to impact is literally the game changer. So you building projects helps do that, right? Just like you were saying, if you talk to me,
Mm-hmm.
because not only can you, because when you do that, you're literally proving three things. One, I can do it. Two, because when you build for users, for example, it's gonna have bugs, it's gonna have issues. I can fix
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That's also something I did not mention. Yeah.
And then the most important piece is I know how the users feel, because that one is the
Yeah.
hardest to tell. It doesn't matter that you can build something in silo. It matters that you can like we all know how we feel if somebody criticizes our looks or something we did. So it means that you can take that criticism and actually go make it better and not take it personally. I'm sorry that I cut that
Yeah.
answer.
No, that's actually a very important point that I should have also mentioned. But yeah, that's actually a good point.
So how do I improve? How do I know that I'm improving when I'm learning?
So that's actually a very good question. And I feel like a lot of people don't actually, ask themselves that question, like, how do I know I'm actually improving? Like, I might be watching, every React tutorial out there, but how do I know I'm actually improving? I would say one thing, the way I knew I was actually improving for sure was the scale of project I was building. I will tell you this: if you keep building the mediocre things, the easy things, the things that you can easily find online, you can easily find a tutorial for, and you build those things, there really isn't any learning taking place. I would say if a project doesn't keep you awake at night, even how funny that sounds, if a project doesn't keep you awake at night, you're really not learning anything. There's really no learning going on, right? You need to you need to challenge yourself. You need to face situations where you need to build projects that you cannot build, but still build it anyway, right? For example, when I built my latest mobile app, the one I built before the parking application I worked on for last semester was a calorie counting app. It was a fitness app. It helps you track your calories, your nutrient intake. When I first had the idea for that project, I knew I wanted an app that I could, just, take out my phone, scan the barcode on the food, and I can log my calories and log all the nutrients that I've eaten and also my water intake, right? That was what I planned. That was my idea. At that point, I knew I could not do this. Like I have never learned anything that gives me the ability to, build something like that. But guess what? I still pursued that project. And that project works. I was able to achieve it. I was able to build that exact feature that I thought I couldn't build when I was still, when that project was still an idea. Right. So I would say that you're actually learning when you actually do things you thought you couldn't do.
Hmm.
Right? Think about it. Let's say you think about the craziest project. Like I can't even think of something crazy that I can do right now. And not to brag. I mean, if I think about it now, there might still be some, nuances that I might not, get to, but there's really nothing that's impossible for me to build. And I know how, cocky that sounds. I know how cocky that sounds, but if you can pitch a project idea to me and I can give you at least I could give you a detailed, explanation on how you can achieve that. Right? So think about the craziest thing that you could ever build. You cannot build it. You know that you probably think there's no way on this earth you can actually, make that work, but still try. You'll be surprised of how much you can do.
Mm.
Like just try, you'll be surprised on how much you can do.
No, I think that like you said that perfectly, because even some of the things like, and I'm not super technical, but some of the things I've been able to do just by setting the target, you'll be amazed for sure.
Yeah.
This other
I
question
mean,
from
people don't. Yeah. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
this other question from Sandy. It says, "Who and what are your biggest influences in the tech space?"
Who are my biggest? I'll say who. There's really no what. It's more about people. There are a lot of people that influence me or I look up to. Um, Omar Codes is one of them. He's actually one of the guys that I first reached out to when I started content creation. There is a no code who was just in the chat a couple minutes ago. Victor. There are a lot of tech content creators, not tech influencers. Two different things. There are a lot of tech content creators that influence me. Omar Codes, Anor, Victor, and I would. This is just something I just want to point out. It might be me diverting a little bit, but I feel it's also important for me to mention this. I would say whenever you're following a content creator, be careful of your mindset. Don't follow this person comparing them to yourself, or comparing yourself to them rather. Follow them with the mindset to actually make them inspire your work, right? Don't follow them, constantly watching their content, asking yourself, why am I not like this person? Why can't I do what this person is doing? Or why can't I build the project Code is building? Or why can't I create the kind of content Code is creating? That is not my mindset following these people. My mindset is, okay, what can I actually learn from the way Omar Codes is making his videos? What can I learn from the way Anor is building his project, or running his podcast? Or I'm following them with the mindset to learn and not really to compare myself, or to bug myself, why am I not like this person, or why am I this? So if you're picking tech content creators, I would say pick people that actually people that can teach you something, or people you can get value from, and not just people who will make you question your ability. Those are two different things.
It's so important that you said that, because it's like comparison is good when it's healthy, right? When you can
Yeah.
look at what the person is doing and compare that to what you can improve in your own situation. If you're
Yep.
looking for a match, apples to apples, I think that's where you get it wrong completely. So yeah, good advice. And then, so Elizabeth is asking, how long did it take you to get here?
I think I already answered this
Yeah,
question. Someone already
yeah.
asked it before, but just to summarize, like I was saying earlier, I started in 2019, and it's probably going to be about 4 years and 3 months right now. But like I was saying, it's not about how long, it's about what I was able to achieve with that time, right? So like I was telling the person that asked the question initially, it might take Joanne like 2 years or 2 months, or rather, to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but it took me about a year and a couple months for me to fully learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to go to the next phase, right? So it's not really about how long it took me, it's what I've been able to learn within that time, and how I know I'm ready to go into the next phase. So don't really focus on how long it took you, or if you're spending so much time on one concept. Spend as much time as you need, just as long as you learn what you need to know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's all the question that we got. We're a little over time. So I think this is the part where we actually wrap it. But before we go, again, big shout out to Levi. Usually we give the guest an opportunity to do a shout out, to promote any upcoming feature films or big budget movies they got coming up. So so now it's your turn.
I mean, I do have. Well, I've actually. It's funny you said this, because I've actually never mentioned this. I mean, I have, but I've never mentioned what I'm actually working on. But outside of tech, I'm also into filmmaking and freelance video work. And for the past 3 months, I've actually been working on a short documentary titled "The Immigrant." It's basically documenting the life of an immigrant, the cultural differences relocating from Africa to the United States, and the documentary doesn't just focus on one part of Africa. It involves people from different parts of Africa, different countries in Africa. Just bringing a lot of people together to kind of like share their story on how life was when they relocated to the United States. So it's a short documentary I'm working on. You would never see it on my Instagram Levi.dev page. I have a separate page where I do a lot of things regarding filmmaking. It's Levi shot it's double underscore. So if you guys are interested in filmmaking, or anything that involves video work, you like the way my video looks, and if you want to get more insight on how I do things like this, definitely check out that Instagram.
I set myself up today. I usually just say that to tease people, and then I actually tease the wrong person, and it's like, bet I'm a filmmaker.
I mean, you gave me the platform, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take it.
that is so that is so funny and so interesting. But thank you so much for joining. This has been, the 60th episode of the Working in Tech podcast. I really appreciate everybody for rocking with us. I really appreciate Levi for making it completely amazing. I'm a little jealous that his setup looks better than mine, but that's a story for another day.
I'm gonna give you some tips after this. Don't worry.
And then we usually have this every Thursday, Working in Tech. Plus, go check out Ask About Tech as well. those are topical stories about tech every single week dropping. So I think it's going to be an interesting way for you to keep up with the industry, because that's another part that people don't talk about. You need to know what's going on just so that you can know how to move, right? You want to go to Meta? You want to know want to go? Maybe after you watch this video, you might be able to tell.
Do not go to Matter. Please do not try it. Please, if you value your career, do not do it. I know, like, it's crazy that, I might end up finding myself at a mentor interview in a couple months or
And
years, and
they'll
someone
say,
plays back this
they'll say,
video that
this
Levi
is what
said, "Do not go to Matter."
it's like, hey, that was just podcast talk. Let's
That
get
was that
over
was just for that was just for the views. That was just for the views. So how much are we talking about?
it. But yeah, that has been the show for today. It's been a really like chill, amazing conversation. Go follow Levi. We just dropped the podcast in the comments on YouTube. And then this has been a really great one. We'll wrap it up